At the request
I am
of
so
Trustee
sorry, my
Bates,
friends. I didn't
next on
know
our agenda is
I was
an
out talking
opportunity
to
for the
people.
board to
Sorry that
discuss
I didn't know there was a
Orange
second
County
part to
Healthcare
this.
Agency Student Symptom Decision Tree. I've asked Assistant Superintendent of Executive Services, Mr. Richard McAlinden, to provide the board with more information relative to the Student Symptom Decision Tree and other information about COVID-19 and PYLUSD. So, Mr. McAlinden, I'll now turn it over to you.
Thank you, and good evening again. Just so board members know that you have a copy of the PowerPoint that you can reference as we go through it. President Buck, members of the board, Dr. Alsasser, and Executive Cabinet, thank you for providing staff an opportunity to present some background information on the Student Symptom Decision Tree and how COVID-19 cases are currently being managed by the district based on guidance from health officials. I would be remiss if I did not start with a thank you and acknowledgement of the incredible work of our health services team. There's no doubt that their work has been key in helping our school district navigate this pandemic. Tonight, our presentation will focus on three key objectives. First, we will start by providing a brief overview about the health guidance and how it is provided to school districts for case management. Next, we'll provide some information regarding the Student Symptom Decision Tree, which is intended to help schools guide decision-making regarding quarantine for positive cases and close contacts. Finally, we will review recent guidance from the Orange County Healthcare Agency, which amended the health order issued by the county on January 14th. This new guidance allows for a group tracing approach, which results in all students receiving the same response regardless of vaccination status. In an effort to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus, while simultaneously trying to keep students in school, the district has followed the guidance provided to us by health authorities since the start of the pandemic. The intent of the guidance is to provide a consistent response to case management to the best of our ability across all schools in our district. As indicated on slide 3, recommendations are provided by the Centers for Disease Control, which are generally adopted by the California Department of Public Health. They then issue guidance to each county across the state, which results in a local health order for us to follow. The Student Symptom Decision Tree was created as a graphic representation of the Orange County healthcare orders. As you are all well aware, with every shift in guidance from these entities, there are resulting modifications to the Student Symptom Decision Tree. The primary purpose of the Student Symptom Decision Tree, as seen on slide 4, is to help school districts determine their response to positive cases and close contacts. It is intended to reflect the guidelines outlined in the current county health order. It is important to note that the current version of the Student Symptom Decision Tree has not yet been updated to reflect the current health order. Our current practice is to follow the guidance outlined in the updated health order issued on January 14th, 2022, and not the outdated Student Symptom Decision Tree. Much of what is presented over the next few slides reflects our practice prior to January 14th, 2022, as it relates to managing close contacts. As a reminder, the request to discuss the Student Symptom Decision Tree was made at the December 14th board meeting prior to this shift in January. The Student Symptom Decision Tree requires a consideration of multiple variables when determining how to respond to individual students. Some of these variables, included in slide 5, include identifying if masks were being worn during exposure to the positive case, the student's current vaccination status, and if they are currently displaying any COVID-19 symptoms. Again, depending on the responses to each of these variables, the Student Symptom Decision Tree provides guidance for school staffs and for parents on how to respond. The following two slides, numbers 6 and 7, illustrate how cases are differentiated depending on whether a student is symptomatic or asymptomatic. On slide 6, for students who are a close contact to a positive case and are displaying COVID-19 symptoms, the Student Symptom Decision Tree recommends the same response regardless of vaccination status. Slide 7 illustrates a differentiated response for students who are identified as close contacts to a positive case, but are not showing any symptoms. The Student Symptom Decision Tree recommends that both vaccinated and unvaccinated students may continue to attend school, but there is a differentiation in that the unvaccinated student would be required to test 5 days after exposure, and would not be able to participate in extracurricular activities for 5 days. It is important to note that as of January 14th, with the revised health order, we are no longer following this practice. Slide 8 provides information on the updated health order we received from the Orange County Healthcare Agency on January 14th, where a second opinion or second option was added to allow for a different approach to responding to students possibly exposed to COVID-19. This is the guidance that our district is currently following, even though the student symptom decision tree has not been updated to reflect changes to this new order. The health order was amended following a high volume of positive cases experienced across the county following the winter break. The updated order allows for group notification for students who have a possible exposure to a positive student in a classroom or school program. All students, whether vaccinated or unvaccinated, are allowed to continue attending school, attend extracurricular activities, monitor their symptoms, and have the option of testing 3 to 5 days following possible exposure to a positive student. Again, with this group notification approach, all students are responded to the same regardless of their vaccination status. Finally, as we transition to slide 9, the updated health order issued on January 14th provides guidance on how we are to respond to students who are exposed to COVID-19 at home. This is the only scenario where there is a difference in how vaccinated or unvaccinated students are treated. As you can see, a vaccinated student exposed to COVID-19 at home has no quarantine requirement, no testing requirement, and continues to attend school provided they wear a mask and monitor their symptoms. An unvaccinated student exposed to COVID-19 at home is required to stay home for 5 days and may return to school on day 6 with a negative test on day 5. In this scenario, there is a differentiated response between the two depending on their vaccination status. We do anticipate the student symptom decision tree will be updated to reflect the revised guidance discussed tonight in the next week or two. Thank you, and that concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McElendon. What do you think? Do you think the revised guidance is going to reflect what's going on at the schools?
It will reflect the group testing because it currently doesn't show that option is available for us in terms of close contact or possible exposure. So it'll reflect the group testing approach or the group contact approach.
So right now at the schools, what I've noticed is everybody's just treated the same.
That's exactly
and so
right.
This is kind of, if someone wants to come forward and say that they've been exposed at home, and you think this is going to be updated so it's equal?
My understanding is the updates are happening right now. They've actually made the changes. It's just with the graphic artists to update it and then get it out to the different school districts. But yes, within the next week or two, it should be.
It'll all be the same for at home. Okay, I'm fine. I'm glad that it's finally happened, and I'm great with this.
Okay, I just got confused.
Yeah, I just to clarify, the only differentiation with how vaccinated versus unvaccinated are treated is when they are exposed at home. That's where there is a difference between the two, according to the new health order. So everything else is the same, except for when the person is exposed to a positive case inside the home. The second to the last slide is the difference. It'll be slide
So only
9.
slide number 9.
That's correct.
States the difference.
That is correct.
And is there a way that we can equalize this?
School.
Because if they're getting COVID at home and they're coming to school, we know that the vaccination doesn't prevent you from getting COVID. It doesn't prevent you from spreading COVID. And you can get COVID multiple times. My sister, we call her the COVID queen because she's had it now 3 times every year. And she just finished her 2020 run and she goes, I'm good for this year now. And she's been vaccinated. So I think there's a lot that if the decision tree is really to protect our students, then it needs to be equally based. That's
So I misinterpreted it. So if this number 9 is going to still stand and it's not going to be updated.
Yes, I think I misspoke. So
Yeah.
yes, that is going to, when they revise it, that will stay because that's currently in the, unless the health order changes,
Okay.
that will stay the same.
Then I agree with Mrs. Anderson. This is what I was going to say because I got COVID from a vaccinated person. So I think that we should have it all the same as far as slide 9. And we should treat everybody equally because we wouldn't want somebody who is vaccinated who had exposure at home to go and maybe affect an entire team, an entire class. So I would like to change it so everyone is treated equal.
Okay, any other comments? I just wanted to follow up. You said that pretty soon you'll have, once the graphics have been done, that will be very similar to what many of us have had posted for probably a year plus now, where it's a really easy read, easy to follow kind of demonstration of.
I think the intent of it was if you read the actual health order, it's not as easy to follow. There's a lot of different pieces to it. I think the idea behind the student symptom decision tree is to make sure that it's a simpler version or a condensed version that's intended to be a graphic representation of the actual health order itself. So yes, when it's done, it'll include the new guidance that we just talked about, which is not currently in the current version of the symptom decision tree. It just needs to reflect the current orders that were on January 14th.
Do you anticipate this to change next week with the governor's office coming out saying?
I have no way of.
I always feel like COVID is like a moving train and we're just trying to catch up.
If I had a crystal ball, I don't know.
Mr. Youngblood, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. The thing that kind of gets me is the symptoms, and the fact that the symptoms that the CDPH puts out is so broad. So you got a child that is in a mask. He's got allergies, either through no fault of his own. He's got the sniffles, or he's sneezing, or whatever. And then all of a sudden, it is considered by the teacher or administrator that they possibly have COVID and they get sent home. Is there a component in which they can be tested before that extreme measure of being sent home for 5 days or whatnot?
Best way I can respond to that is while a student may demonstrate, because obviously there are other illnesses that demonstrate the same type of symptoms as COVID. So the idea is that, and there are cases that we've experienced where the student who's demonstrating those symptoms is determined not to have COVID, but something else, as you're indicating. A doctor has the ability to give an alternate diagnosis to whatever those symptoms are. So for example, if a doctor historically has treated a student with any kind of other medical condition, they can rule out COVID, whether it's through a test, or they can just determine that the symptoms that the student is displaying are attributable to some other medical condition that they're already familiar with. So, but the hard part is that the trickiest part is that they are the same, and we have had cases where a student is demonstrating those symptoms and an individual might be convinced that it's another illness when it turns out to be COVID. So they just they're two alike. So we just don't know, but a doctor has that ability to let the parent know that it's an alternative diagnosis.
I guess so. My question to you is, currently we have no alternative but to send that child home until they are tested, whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated.
Or until the symptoms resolve.
Or until the symptoms
A student may have a headache, for example, and the headache may be attributable to any number of things. If they go home and the symptoms resolve, then they're able to return. Or if they get an alternative diagnosis from a doctor who has familiarity with the student's medical condition.
Okay, so currently we would not, even as a precursor before we send them home, is to have them checked with our mini kits that we were given by the state.
The kits that we have, we don't issue those kits unless parents consent to that. So we can certainly provide the parent with that kit to take home. We want to make sure that those kits are, as they're readily available, we can provide a student with that to help determine whether or not they do have COVID or not. Parents are always welcome to get their own kit through their own resources. And we also have the Ambry testing that we've been doing, the PCR testing when there are, as an option to families, but they don't have to take advantage of that if they choose not to. They can simply, make their own decisions about whether they want to test a student or not. But it is available for them to rule out COVID one way or another.
Okay, so let me ask you, if a parent chooses to have their child tested that is, say, in the office because they had headache or sniffles or whatever, and wanted to wait the 15 or 30 minutes that it takes to confirm a positive or negative test, would we accept that as okay? So it comes back negative, the child doesn't have to go out for 5 days, or is it an automatic that they have to leave no matter what?
The student would not need to go home for 5-day period, but I'm just not sure the time delay in the receiving the test results from the at-home test and how long they can come back, but we can certainly follow up with you on that.
Okay, I think that would be appropriate. Thank you, sir.
You got it.
The only thing that I would say is I would encourage all parents that if you have a kid that's got a cold or the flu or COVID or anything, just keep them home.
That's been the messaging since the very beginning, because again, we've had cases where it turns out to be COVID, and we're doing our best to prevent that from spreading on school campus.
I absolutely agree. The only problem is during these windy times, this wind is bringing up a lot of hay fevers and allergies just due to mask wearing or not. And I would hate for kids to lose out on in-classroom learning as well as extracurricular activity because of something that's out of their control.
I would say that we just start treating everybody the same with whatever's left. I mean, it seems like we're at that point where, we're getting every day. I'm getting every day from both high schools. I'm getting, they've been in close contact. But they're still, they don't have symptoms, not sick, so they get to keep on doing their sports. I would just say that this at-home thing, that if we're going to make anybody stay home, then we make everybody stay home. Because it does, when sports, when it occurs with sports, it really isn't fair to allow somebody just because of a status, a vaccine status, to let them go play, even if they can be, presenting symptoms to other people and then making somebody, that is stay home. So that would be my suggestion. And I would say too, I think Yorba High School, I'm going to say that the staff did a good job. I sent one of my kids to school and he was fine. And then about noon, he had fever and he had COVID. So they were amazing. The staff was amazing and they did great. I was 30 minutes away that day to come get him. But, they're very, it was great. I couldn't have asked for anything better getting back to school. It was great. So I really do want to compliment your staff and all the nursing staff. They've been doing an excellent job.
I will pass it along. Thank you.
Just one more question. In the unvaccinated column on slide number 9, it doesn't say how long a student has to stay home if they haven't gotten a test. It says the 5 days with the negative test, that they can come back on day 6, but it doesn't say how long if the parents choose not to.
It's a full 10.
It's a full 10?
If they choose not to test, they stay home for a full 10.
So that carries over from the old. Okay,
That's
it's
correct.
not listed on.
It's not listed, but the health order is still listed as 10 if they choose not to test.
Okay, thank you.
So we need to confirm what we would like Dr. Elsasser to do.
I would say that the remaining health guidances that we have here, that we just make it the same for the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, that we have the same protocol, just based on What we now know is that vaccinated, can spread it just as easily as unvaccinated people, and that we just treat all of our students and our staff the same.
So the one that's different is exposure at home with asymptomatic close contact. So you're suggesting that vaccinated and unvaccinated quarantine for 5 days. No extracurricular, wear a mask, return on the 6th day with a negative test. Am I hearing that from everyone? I got a 2. Is that a, Mr. Youngblood?
Yeah, they should be the same.
Mrs. Freeman, any? No? Okay, so it looks like you have consensus to move forward with that.
That's fine.
Okay, so that brings us now to supplement the annual update to the 2021-22 LCAP. And Dr. Adamson, take it away.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, President Buck, members of the board, Dr. Alsassa, executive cabinet and community members. It's my pleasure to present to you this evening our supplemental annual update for Placentia Yorba Linda's 21-22 Local Control and Accountability Plan, or LCAP, as we refer to it, as a means of providing you with an update on our overall progress thus far. I will make mention of the fact that you should all have a copy of the slides as well in front of you. And I'll be moving on to slide number 2. Well, Assembly Bill 130 is new legislation that calls on districts to provide a supplemental mid-year update to the 21-22 LCAP and budget overview at a regularly scheduled meeting of the Governing Board. Information tonight will be presented in accordance with the following 5 topics. Number 1, we'll be providing updated information for the budget overview for parents. 2, responses to each of the 5 supplemental annual update prompts. 3, the status of the implementation of actions for our LCAP. 4, budget information to date for each action in the LCAP. And finally, I will provide you with available mid-year data related to the metrics identified in the 21-22 LCAP. So let's begin with the budget overview. When Placentia Yorba Linda adopted our LCAP and budget in June of 2021, the State Budget Act had not yet been adopted. We have since come to find out that additional funds were included that were not anticipated by our district at that time. The table before you illustrates the impact to our adopted budget overview. Note the increase to our supplemental funding, and this increase is directly related to the increase in our unduplicated pupil percentage, which went from 42.28% to 44.79%. As a reminder, the term unduplicated pupils includes our English learners, our foster youth, and low-income students. The next 6 slides will provide updates that relate to a series of 5 prompts. The first prompt will refer to practices that we follow to engage our educational partners or stakeholders on the use of additional state funds received. Listed on the slide before you are the 4 grants for which Placentia Yorba Linda has either already applied or is in the process of applying. For each of the listed grants, we engage our educational partners through a combination of the public comment opportunities at governing board meetings, parent and student surveys, advisory groups, and official public hearings. So first is the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant, and you'll recall that a public hearing was held in November of 2021, and this grant was board approved in December of 2021. The next grant for which we're in the process of applying is the A through G Completion Improvement Grant. We intend to bring this plan forward for board approval in March of 2022. The third grant, which we're developing a plan for, is the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, which will provide funding for summer enrichment programs. Parent surveys will go out in the spring of 2022. And then finally, the fourth grant for which we're currently developing a plan is the Pre-K Planning and Implementation Grant, which will assist the district in our plans to extend our transitional kindergarten program in accordance with current state legislation, AB 22, which requires all California public school campuses to gradually expand existing TK classrooms to include all 4-year-olds. Stakeholder input will be captured through a combination of advisory groups and surveys in the spring of 2022, and we intend to bring this plan forward for board approval in June of 2022. I just ask you to note that all of these one-time funds do carry expiry dates, and so we are requiring us to expend those funds first before using any of our assigned LCFF funds. The second prompt refers to the use of additional concentration funding. However, since Placentia Yorba Linda's unduplicated population count is less than 55% of our total population, we're not eligible for these funds, which means this prompt is not applicable. Next, we move on to prompt 3, which addresses educational partner engagement. Specifically, this applies to how we engage our educational partners on the use of additional federal funds that we receive. As a means of ensuring community involvement and voice in the gathering of input on the development for the ESSA3 expenditure plan, we included ideas on how to spend the available funds. We called upon existing advisory groups in Placentia Yorba Linda, including each group that is listed on this particular slide. The next 3 slides offer a detailed description of how we designated the ESSA3 funds as a means of addressing 2 criteria. First, I will cover the strategies implemented to ensure continuous and safe in-person learning. Under this category, we assigned funds to 2 areas. One, as a means of continuing to ensure good air quality, we're currently awaiting approval from the California Department of Education, CDE, for new HVAC units, which are needed at a variety of sites. The anticipated date for approval is March of 2022. And 2, in the area of COVID-19 personal protective equipment and cleaning supplies, funds were assigned to ensure the ongoing safety of our students and staff for continued in-person instruction. This includes the purchase and supply of personal protective equipment to all students and staff, hand washing, sanitizing and hydration stations, and air purifiers and upgraded air filters to capture particulates. The impact of lost instructional time on our students is the second area of focus for prompt 4. And I'm pleased to highlight just some of the programs and expenditures that we implemented that serve to meet this need. An additional transportation route for the Rio Vista school attendance area was added as a means of ensuring access to students living in this attendance area. In the area of wellness, funding was allocated to extend both counselling and wellness support in the 22-23 school year, so we're extending that into next school year. To support our special education students, funding was allocated to continue to fund registered behaviour technicians. And if you'll recall, we assigned a large amount of the funds to the provision of enrichment activities. A reminder that at the request of the board, we raised this allocated amount to $4 million, all as a means to provide for enriched experiences for all students. Every school site has been allocated funds to spend on enrichment or hands-on activities to meet the comprehensive needs of our students. We're currently assisting our site administrators in the submission of their plans for these funds, and they will have until the end of the 22-23 school year to spend them. To make this process more manageable, we've allocated half of the funds for this year and the second half for next year. For this year, sites have been asked to spend their funds before April of 2022. Any money not spent will obviously carry over to the next year and be added to next year's allotment. The sites have been grateful and extremely eager to assign these funds, so much so that they've already begun to do so. For example, you will see on tonight's consent calendar, Ruby Drive has already submitted 2 requests for field trips for their 5th and 6th graders, one to Ocean Institute and the other to Catalina Island. And finally, we're pleased to report that our middle school sports program was also implemented in the fall of 2021. We've already held 2 intramural competitions, volleyball and cross country, both of which were extremely well received, and we look forward to the continuation of this program with 2 more events next year, this year, and the continuation of that program into the next school year. So all remaining funds were dedicated towards either 1, updating technology, for which we are pleased to report we are currently accepting proposals to replace all of the outdated technology in our classrooms, and then 2, communication, for which live streaming services have been implemented to support all of our governing board meetings, so as to provide continuity of services and access to all community members. And then finally, prompt 5 asks us to provide a description of how we are using the additional funds that we received in a manner that is aligned with this year's LCAP. Since the function of the LCAP is to support comprehensive strategic planning, We always include in our development process the use of data analysis, the outlining of our areas of success, while also identifying our areas of greatest need, all while still engaging community partners, designing actions, and determining budget priorities. It's this process that we followed for all funds received through the Educator Effectiveness and the SF3 funding grants. And it's the same process we intend to follow for the upcoming A through G Completion Improvement Grant, the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, and the Pre-K Planning and Implementation Grant. As a means of ensuring we maximize improvement outcomes for all our students, our protocols are very intentional. First, we review the actions in the LCAP and then design additional actions and outcomes that serve to significantly enhance the programs and supports that are already in place, all through the use of these additional funds. Throughout the school year, the implementation of our LCAP actions will be at one of 3 stages, either not started, in progress, or complete. And since we find ourselves halfway through the school year, it's anticipated that all of those actions will be in progress, as the slide indicates. Included in your handout is a detailed update on the expenditure amounts to date on each of our current actions, each by focus area. This slide provides a sample of some of the expenditures assigned, showing the specific action, the budgeted amount, and the amount spent as of December 2021. Note that because these actions are in progress, it's not anticipated that we will have expended the full designated amount until the end of this school year. You'll recall that for each of the key actions we identified, in particular those measuring academic progress, we were required to identify the metrics for each school year, which we use to measure and track our progress for each of the identified actions. Included in your handout is also a detailed overview of the progress we have made thus far for each of those actions identified in our LCAP, again by focus area. I'd like to point out that not all of the metric outcomes are available, since some can only be measured at the end of the year. A sample of some of the metrics and progress for each is shown on the next slide. For each action in our LCAP, we're required to provide both the baseline and the outcome data. The baseline data represents the most recent data that was available for each action in June of 2021 when the LCAP was developed. Yes, you will see that in some cases, such as state testing, this goes back as far as the 18-19 school year when state testing was last administered for all students in grades 3 through 8 and 11th grade. It's for this reason that we're using iReady assessment data this year to track growth for math and English language arts for our K-8 students. By comparing the outcome data to the baseline scores where students started, we can effectively track student growth. So that's essentially the process that we use. Just some highlights to point out in some of the various focus areas. You'll note that we do show state testing scores for our 11th graders, since they did, as you recall, they did take the math and ELA Smarter Balanced tests last year. Their scores showed a very slight decline in both math and English language arts when compared to the 18-19 school year. But we remain mindful of the conditions under which the test was taken. We had several of our students tested at home, and a full 17% of students opted out of the test completely. We also see, based on the data we have, that we're holding steady in the area of A through G requirements and our early assessment program. We did fall short last year in meeting our English learner reclassification rates. However, we anticipate this rate to increase this year as a result of returning to in-person instruction. Focus Area 2.0 highlights our progress in the area of effective instruction and leadership. We're pleased to report that we met all of the local indicators that measure our progress in those areas. Focus Area 3.0 measures our progress in engaging our community. Here too, we continue to maintain low, middle, and high school dropout rates and a steady graduation rate that continues to exceed both the state and county levels. We've also remained consistent in our ability to engage parents and the community. And then finally, for Focus Area 4.0, which measures our progress and ability to ensure a safe and respectful environment for our students, we've maintained steady in the variety of categories that are all listed. On one point, I believe we can all agree, and which the updated data that you have in front of you reflects quite accurately and powerfully, the continuing impacts of the pandemic, including the challenges of hiring staff, implementing health and safety protocols, and addressing learning acceleration has presented several challenges this past year. Despite the challenges, it's also evident that our students have shown incredible resilience and dedication through it all. Placenta Yorba Linda remains steadfast in our commitment to implement the LCAP with fidelity as a means of providing the necessary services and supports to our students and ensuring their ongoing safety, academic success, and social and emotional well-being. We really do feel that nothing has ever been or will be as important as that focus right now. We'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and sincerely thank the hard work and dedication of our board and employees, the support of our parents, and the resilience of our students in our commitment to being a dynamic and supportive learning community that prepares each and every student for success now and into the future. Any questions that you have at this time on any of the updates that I've presented?
First of all, thank you very much for the report. I just want to say how much I am very pleased to take note of the importance of re-engagement, getting our kids back connected to school and to learning and certainly to each other. The mental health issues we know are big time, and I'm sure we're just going to see more of that as time goes on. And looking at the metrics that you had on the LCAP on page, I'm not sure if I have the right numbers, but let's say page 13 by my count. Talking about the reclassification rate, I see that we've dropped in our outcome data that we have at this time. I know we have historically in recent years been putting a lot of focus on that, and we were, I think, on the right path on that, and of course things got kind of hijacked, if you could say that. I think re-engaging students by means of some of the things you touched on, the hands-on, different things that give them new experiences, but with those experiences come new or reinforcing vocabulary. And for getting some of our students, all of our students certainly, but for those English learners, I think there's a nexus there, and I'm really hopeful for that as being one of the ways in which we bring our reclassification back up.
The only comment I want to make is under advocating. So when you go to prompt number 2, use of concentration funding, well, we don't have 55% that are unduplicated, so we're out of luck. I encourage us all to continue to push funding that increases the base and separates that concentration out. Instead of it being at 55%, we're doing it based on the percentage that each district has so that it's more equitable throughout the whole state. I know it's an uphill battle and we've been dealing this for a long time, but you can see right here that we have English learners that need extra help, and not having that extra little for them shows in our numbers, and it would be really beneficial. So I would love it if we could all continue just to advocate for an increase in the base funding and change to that concentration percentage. Anyone else?
I was just going to make a comment about the enrichment. I've really enjoyed, as I've gone to these schools, and having the principals share with me what they're doing with this money and how excited they are. And I just think that this is an excellent way that we are really meeting our students' needs and getting them back into school and exciting them. And, you mentioned Ruby, and I was so excited to see that on the consent calendar. And I can't wait to vote yes on that for the students, because it's a big deal to these students, and they don't have that kind of opportunity at those schools. So I'm very excited about that. And then I just want to make sure that if we don't spend all of our LCAP money this year because of all the additional funding, we're going to be able to carry it over into the next year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's all I have.
Mr. Youngblood, any comments?
No, ma'am.
Mrs. Blades?
My only thought when we're talking about the ESSER money is So you're watching all these videos of all these school boards who are getting sued. And supposedly it's in the application for the ESSER funds that it says that you have to have vaccine clinics X, Y, and Z. Are we sure that we're not, that in that application that we're not taking funds that we're going to be tied to, to 2023? Like, I'm not sure if we've seen the application. I couldn't find it in the American Recovery Rescue Plan Act. I read it, today, and I couldn't find it in other things that have been, but I haven't seen the application. So I just want to make sure that our constituents realize that we're not stuck, because obviously this is money that's really good for our district, but I just think people are worried about the strings.
Understood. And I can send you the assurances page that really lists all of the language that we had to agree to when we submitted the plan. But as Dr. Alsasser said earlier, we have verified and we've shared that language and gotten written confirmation from both CDE and OCDE that there are no strings attached, that there is no requirement for, even if that mandate is lifted, that we have to continue to wear masks as a result of accepting the funds. That has been shared with us explicitly and in writing as well, that we have that.
And I sent late this afternoon, I sent the board a copy of our entire application so that you can review it as well.
Okay, all right. We don't have anything to decide on for that, so we'll move into curriculum and instruction. Mrs. Freeman, would you like to make a motion?
Since I kind of wear that hat at times for the district and ROP, yes, I would like to make a motion that we adopt resolution number 21-19, designating the month of February 2022 as Career and Technical Education Month.
I'll second. We'll give it to Mr. Youngblood.
Yeah, he has none on here. Oh, just one. Mr. Youngblood. Okay, so motion by Mrs. Freeman, second by Mr. Youngblood. Any discussion? Share a little? Oh, I'm going to pass it to Janet. Oh, or Dr. Addison. We've got a lot of pass it on.
All right, well, good evening again. Tonight we bring to you the reading of Resolution 2019, which declares February as Career and Technical Education Month. Ms. Gina Aguilar plays a pivotal role in the implementation, oversight, and coordination of our district CTE program, and it's to her focused and direct attention to which we attribute PYL's ongoing success and the many doors that continue to be opened for so many of our students. Our CTE programs offer a variety of ways for our students to be successful and find rewarding careers by offering diversity in education, training, and soft skills that academic courses alone simply can't provide. To present this resolution, it's my pleasure to introduce our Director of High School Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Gina Aguilar.
Thank you, Dr. Adamson. Good evening, President Buck, members of the board, Superintendent Alsasser, Executive Cabinet, and community members. Each February, we honor our outstanding CTE programs in recognition of Career and Technical Education Month. PYLUSD is home to 6 Career Link Academies and 28 CTE pathways, all of which prepare students to be college and career ready by providing them with hands-on experiences, both technical and academic skills, and leadership opportunities. Our state-of-the-art facilities, industry standard technology and equipment, and outstanding CTE teachers have made PYLUSD a model for career and technical education in the county and in the state. Perhaps our biggest source of pride are the thousands of students who have benefited from our CTE programs and now represent PYLUSD in their college and career pursuits. We are grateful for the board's ongoing support of career and technical education at PYLUSD. It is for these many reasons that I present to you this evening for your approval, resolution number 20-23, declaring February as Career and Technical Education Month. Thank you.
I just want to add that one of the other items we have before us this evening is what I think is just so exceptional, and that is we have a group coming from Travis Middle going to the HOSA conference in Long Beach. We have as has been indicated, one of our powerful programs is the medical program that we have at Esperanza on the West Campus. And the experience of going to the conference for HOSA students is just such a phenomenal opportunity, and to see that we now are reaching down and giving that opportunity for those in the younger grades to participate as they're exploring career pathways, I think that's just tremendous. So I'm just real thrilled about that.
I also was going to mention consent item number 43 for Valdez Academy, the Learn by Layers, because I really feel like we're kind of in the middle of a technical industrial revolution, you might say. And I think it's so great that we're moving these programs lower and lower, and so our students are more prepared and can get more out of our classes. And I really feel sorry for the teachers that have to keep elevating their skills, because it's just moving so quickly right now. So I think this is a great opportunity. Thanks.
Mr. Youngblood, any comments?
No, I think this is a great resolution. Being a CTE instructor myself, it is definitely a great thing to observe and to be a part of.
Thank you. I want to say I'm thrilled that we're also doing this. It's having the opportunity for students who don't go to college to find their passion and find their interest and have the opportunity to check it out. The younger they are, the better. So I'm happy to support this as well. Okay, so with that, back to my page, we'll do a roll call vote. Mrs. Freeman.
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson.
Aye.
Mrs. Blades. Aye. Mr. Youngblood.
Aye.
And Mrs. Buck, aye as well. Motion carries 5-0. That brings us to business and financial, and Mr. Giordano is going to address the next two items. We do need to make a motion for the first one.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the annual independent audit report for the 2020-21 fiscal year.
A second.
Motion by Mrs. Anderson, second by Mrs. Blades. Mr. Giordano.
Thank you and good evening. Based on the requirements that are defined in Education Code, school districts are required to have an annual audit performed each year by an independent audit firm, and that report must be presented to the district's Board of Education. With that said, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jeff Nigro with our audit firm, Nigro & Nigro, who will be sharing the results of our 2021 annual financial audit. And Mr. Nigro is a certified public accountant and partner with the firm. He's been practicing for over 22 years and specializes in the audit and accounting requirements for K-12 school districts.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad to see everybody turned out to hear about the district's audit report. So the audit is for the 2021 fiscal year, which is now 7 months in the rear window. But the timeline of the audit is, you as a board adopt unaudited actual financial statements in September. Then we come out in the fall and perform our final audit on those numbers. The audit's normally due to be filed with the state by December 15th. This year was an exception, and they gave us till January 31st to file the audit. And so the audit was done timely, and so now here we are presenting it to you 7 months later. The audit is an independent opinion of your financial statements. So we're giving what's called an unmodified opinion. It's a clean opinion, and that's really what you want to have. Because what we're saying is the financial statements were prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. I know that's exciting, but that's what we do, and we're making sure that when the books close, that they're actually following proper accounting procedures. So kudos on that. Now the report itself, obviously, it's quite lengthy. I'm not going to walk you through the whole thing, but I do like to mention that right after our opinion letter, there's a section in there called Management's Discussion and Analysis. And I know for those of you who aren't numbers people, you don't want to get bogged down in all the detail. You can just read through that section. It's a good overview. It's kind of an executive summary, if you will. And it talks about the district's finances, how they changed year over year. There's some information in there, not too scary, about accounting information, about the financial statements. But it's very summarized. If you really want to get into the detail, the financial statements themselves follow that section, and then the notes follow the financial statements, which get into even more detail. So if you really want to get into governmental accounting and understand how GASB works and how pensions are accounted for. It's all in there in gory detail. After that section, there's some other information in there. The GASB and the State Controller's Office require a bunch of schedules about the district's information, instructional days, trend schedules, and a lot of other information in there about pensions. And then finally, the audit takes you towards the back of the report, which is where everybody goes first, because that's the findings. Everybody wants to know, what did we do? And I'm very pleased to report there were no audit findings this year in the financial statement areas or under federal or state compliance. And that's actually quite an achievement, because there were significantly more audit requirements in the federal funds and in the state funds this past year because of all the new COVID money. And there were restrictions on that, as well as a lot of the new state programs. And this the current year is going to have even more, so it gets even more exciting. But no findings to report, and that's actually quite an achievement. So that's the end of the report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mrs. Freeman.
I always ask this question. I know that we have a great staff that does all this, but as you visited and your team came in, were you able to have, I'll say free reign, you had all the cooperation that you had? I know, I'm sure you did, but I always ask just to be sure that anything you needed that was requested, you were able to get to.
Yes, absolutely. Not a problem. We have a electronic portal that allows the district to upload documents electronically, but we are also here on site, and Mr. Giordano, Dina over there, her team, everybody, top to bottom, everybody's very cooperative and no delays in getting what we need.
Thank you so much.
I was just going to congratulate Mr. Giordano. That is quite an accomplishment, and hopefully you guys can hold it together for next year with all the new requirements. So that will be an exciting study at night, I'm sure. I just wanted to point out, you also give recommendations, and I was really excited to see that we're going to be giving quarterly training for our ASB directors and clerks, and because it seems like that's always a tricky area, and so I was very excited for that. And I have a question: is there like training or certifications for new activities directors or clerks? Is there some sort of like class they go to kind of learn this accounting, or is it learn as you go?
It's a great question. There is a training that we're going to be holding. It's coming up here on April 4th. It's actually going to be put on by our audit firm. Mr. Magro and his team is going to be putting on that training, and it'll be for all of our secondary principals, APs, finance clerks, activities directors, and so we've got a lot of new staff that will be attending that training, and so that's a great opportunity. But also those ASB quarterly meetings that we have, that's a great time for them to share best practices as well, and they do that regularly.
Thank you.
I'll follow up with that. I appreciate the recommendations that we can pass along to ASB to make sure that they're doing a little bit better. So, anything else? Mr. Youngblood? Mr. Youngblood?
I'm good, thank you. No question.
All right, so seeing none other, we'll go ahead and take the vote. And we'll do that by roll call. Mrs. Freeman?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Blades? Aye. And Mr. Youngblood?
All right.
And aye for me as well, so motion carries 5-0. Brings us to our next business and financial. Take a motion on that one as well.
I'll make a motion to authorize the extension of Irvine Unified School District bid number 1920-01 IT for technology equipment and peripherals, including Chromebooks with CW or CDW-G, effective February 9th through December 31st of 2022.
Second.
Mr. Giordano.
Thank you. This action item is a request to authorize computer equipment purchases using the Irvine Unified School District piggyback bid with CDWG through December 31st of 2022. And use of the bid will continue to allow our district to purchase computer equipment at a discount off the catalog price. Additionally, each purchase can be negotiated individually, and the district may choose to purchase from another vendor if pricing is not competitive. And this bid's been the primary procurement solution for the district's computer, laptop, and Chromebook purchases.
Any comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take that vote as well. Mrs. Freeman?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Blades?
Aye.
Mr. Youngblood?
Aye.
Mrs. Buck is an aye as well. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, so that brings us to our consent calendar. These are actions proposed as a block vote and are consistent with approved practices of the district and are deemed routine in nature. Since trustees receive board agenda backup information in advance of the scheduled meetings, they're prepared to vote with knowledge of the block vote items, but always able to poll if necessary. So does anybody have anything to poll, or would we like to make a motion for the whole block?
I will make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
I actually needed to pull a couple things.
Okay, go ahead and pull those.
10, 18, and 24.
10, 18, and 44?
24.
24. Okay, so we'll vote for the rest of those in block.
President Buck,
Yes.
may I also pull number 40, 40?
Okay. All right, so we'll vote on, is that the only one, Mr. Youngblood?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll vote on the whole block except for 10, 18, 24, and 40. All those in favor, roll call. Mrs. Freeman? Aye. Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Blades?
Aye.
Mr. Youngblood?
Aye.
Mrs. Buck is an aye. Motion carries 5-0. And we'll start with number 10. Need a motion first.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with Chris Becerra for February 9th, 2022 to June 30th of 2022.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Blades, second by Mrs. Freeman. Comments?
My only question is we've been using him, but I know that we've been hiring tons and tons of people in this area. So I was wondering if we can get through without having to spend the $25,000 and use maybe our own people. And then also too, some of the latest research has been coming out that some of the socio-emotional learning is actually been linked to critical race theory. And so I was just curious if there's more about him or if we do have the staffing now to go ahead without him.
I can speak to that, Trustee Blades. And so Chris Becerra, you're absolutely right. We hired him as a consultant to come in at the beginning of this year. But since, if you recall, our director of expanded learning went on a leave and she has since, resigned. And so that's left that position open, and not that he's coming in to fill that, but he has been coming in to, just fill some of those gaps, continued professional development, which is what, we hired him, we signed a contract with him to do at the beginning of the year. It's specific for PBIS, that he is training our preschool and expanded learning staff in that particular area. What we've also been having him do is, again, since we don't have a director in that role, is he's been also coming in to assist with the planning for our universal TK, because he has extensive experience in that area. And so that's taking a lot of time, from all of our staff right now. And then also in the development of, we're applying for funding for that as well. And there's a whole intense, plan that we have to write in order to do that. So to answer the question, do we have, can some of our current staff take that on? I wish that we did have that, but without a director, that would normally be the person doing that. And obviously, as we've shared with you, we're in the process of recruiting right now for that. And our hope is that, the sooner we can fill that position, the better. But in the meantime, I'm anticipating at least for the next 2 to 3 months that, we're going to need, his support and help. In addition with that, he brings, just wonderful, he's got incredible connections with other districts, and so he's, been serving as a consultant in other districts too. He's learning a lot about, their plans and being able to share, some great resources and ideas that are helping us, in that development process. And so it's really, it's a combination. It's not just the training piece of it that we've been leaning on him for. He's really been putting a lead in a lot of other areas at this time. But to answer your question, if you wanted more information on, I can absolutely get that as well. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Freeman.
Yes. In reviewing the information about Mr. Becerra, he was with the Orange County Department of Education for numbers of years, and certainly would be familiar with the programs that we have, what our district goals would be in terms of looking at serving the students that need that social, emotional help. This is new information to hear that this somehow is connected to CRT, because one of our main goals that we've spoken of has been mental health and helping students. And this seems to be with all that has been outlined here as to what he would do to work with our staff members. I don't quite see that nexus there.
I had a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
Regarding Mr. Becerra, do we have information on his statistics of how he's done in the past and the positive outcomes that he may have had? I think that would probably ease a little more concern based upon maybe some current statistics on him.
I can get some information together for you on, some of his former practices, and absolutely, I can see what I can put together to present to the board. Yes.
And I'm assuming that we have to, just for the money aspect, that we have to have it till the end of the school year. We couldn't go on like a 2 or 3 month contract in case we do get a director and then he or she is able to take over. Or is this just we're just assuming we need help till the end of the year?
So it's actually, we're just saying till the end of the year, but you'll see it's not to exceed at, that amount, 25,000. So it's really as much as we need and how many hours we need before then. It's
okay. So we could pay 1,000 and find a director and be done.
correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and take that roll call vote. Mrs. Freeman?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Blades?
Aye.
Mr. Youngblood?
Aye.
And Mrs. Buck? That passes, that's an aye, passes 5-0. Okay, number 18, so we'll need a motion for that one.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with the Orange County Department of Education to provide professional development for student wellness team lead members, as well as Yorba Linda High School administration and leadership from February 9th, 2022 to June 30th of 2022.
I'll second.
Okay, first by Mrs. Blades, second by Mrs. Anderson. Dr. Adamson, should I turn it over to her?
But actually,
Or did
can
you
I
have to
just
comment
say,
first?
yeah,
Go ahead.
this was my issue with what I spoke at in my board report is we're talking about restorative practices, but I feel like we're not doing restorative practices in our schools right now. And so I hesitate to spend any money on something that we're not practicing. I've had several teachers, contact me and they've said, we've had students with a lot of issues. They've threatened them. There's been like some physical assaults. There's been threats to school. There's been all this stuff. And it's very, very hard for them to remove any students from their classroom, even for a single period. And then so when we talk about the masks and a kid wearing the wrong mask, we're removing them for the entire day or removing them for the entire week. Or as we heard earlier, you're getting these excessive punishments, 2 weeks of no recess, no lunch, no PE. And so I just can't support this program and support spending money when, as of right now, we're not providing any equity to these students. And it seems like we're just cherry picking what students and what issues we're going to, discuss these restorative practices with. And so I think until we're like pretty uniform across the board that I can't support this.
It's disappointing to hear, Trustee Bates, that yes, you're hearing some of those stories of students, because you're absolutely right. I mean, our intent is to be there to be able to support students no matter what, you know, the struggles that they're enduring. Just a reminder for this particular training, it's only specifically for our wellness specialists. It's not intended to, you know, do with all teachers, you know, across the district. It's really just for our wellness specialists to help them and our counselors to meet the needs of the unique students, you know, that they're working with on a daily basis. I do fully believe that yes, restorative practices, that would be a wonderful, you know, training to be able to provide to all of our teachers, because I think it provides them with the skills and the tools, you know, their ability to be able to work, you know, in a just a more proactive and, as the word implies, restorative, you know, approach with students. But at this point, it really is just for our wellness specialists, and you know, the intent being that, you know, once they are trained, that yes, absolutely, they can share some of those strategies with the teachers that they work with. But it would just be just for those, you know, intense tier 3, you know, behaviors and challenges at this time.
But it seems like our masks are tier 3 in the way that we're, you know.
You said masks.
It seems like our masks are like being treated right now as tier 3. So I just can't support it.
I really like restorative practices, and I think from the research I've done on the website and provided and spoke to other administrators, that this is a really important issue, and I feel like it's an important skill that our students need. And if they're in a tier 3 and they're already, you know, they already have consent from their guardian to receive these interventions from our wellness team, I think this is a really important skill that they are learning. So I'm for this.
And I appreciate you pointing that out as well, that yes, all of these students, we do need permission, you know, to work, you know, with them and to apply some of these specific strategies as well. So absolutely, thank you.
I'm also very excited about this. I'm interested to see how it's going to roll out, and the things that our wellness specialists are going to learn, and the things that they can implement. I've been in some of our classes at middle and high school where it's our students that are the most at risk, and being able to work with our counselors, and it's made a difference to them. And so giving a little extra training on how to work out those conversations, work out those smaller differences that students might have, that conflict, so that it doesn't escalate, and so that they have an understanding on how to mitigate that themselves ongoing. I think it's great. I would like to learn more about how it goes, and potentially, you know, maybe it goes further than just our mental health. Okay, so with that, we'll take a roll call. Mr. Youngblood?
Real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
So I had a question about this. My thought is that I want to get a little better definition, maybe not definition, just a better understanding of what restorative practices actually are. I think, like President Buck was saying, it would be nice for us to know exactly what is being taught and being involved in this training. Do you think we can get a copy of the lesson plan for what's going to be provided?
We can absolutely do that. Yes, an agenda and sort of itinerary. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I figure if we're spending $3,500 on this, we probably want to know exactly what's being taught, just so we have knowledge of some of the definitions that are being placed out there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so with that, we'll take a roll call vote. Mrs. Freeman?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Blades?
No.
Mr. Youngblood?
No, until I find out more info.
And Mrs. Beck is an aye, so that motion carries 3-2. Okay, and a motion for number 24.
I'll make a motion to approve the district's membership with the California Association of Suburban School Districts for the year 2022.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Anderson, second by Mrs. Freeman. Mrs. Blades, you pulled it. Would you like to?
Yeah,
speak to
I
that?
just don't think we need to give any more money to a lobbyist organization. We already give like 30-something thousand to the CSBA, which is a lobbyist group. And so I just don't see the need, especially when it doesn't appear that they're lobbying for the things that our constituents feel are important. So I'm a no.
Madam President.
Yes. Ms. Freeman.
Yes, I'd just like to add that we have in the past attended these meetings, and we also have representatives from the district that I know utilize the services and the expertise. The particular thing about the PYLUSD is that we're not a rural school district. We're certainly, and most districts in the state, I think, are rural or very small compared to us. But we're also not a large district like San Francisco or San Diego or Los Angeles. We are a suburban-sized district, and we have issues that are important to us, and there are times where we need to have that representation and the information and a way to share out to them, those that often lead these gatherings when we've had these meetings, usually at the California School Board's conference. They are a good resource for us, and I would support us continuing our arrangement with them.
No.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yeah, they, when I looked at their website, they definitely have a lobbying platform that they like to present. So I'm going to be a no for these guys.
Dr. Alfonso, can you share the information that you get from this? Because I think you attend these meetings and represent our district.
So they typically share out with superintendents at the Orange County Superintendent's monthly meetings, and they just keep us apprised of legislation that's coming down the pike and status of that. And so they also publish probably on a weekly basis an email that comes to me and all the other superintendents that I share with my executive team just on legislation. So this is a new organization for me. I had not belonged to it in my previous experience, and it's been helpful.
Are you able at those meetings to advocate for our district and let them know of our needs?
So, for example, they were part of the meeting that we were just last Friday that we had with the healthcare agency, where we pushed all the leaders to get the message back to CDPH that we are urging them to lift the mask mandate. And so they were part of that. They heard that.
Okay.
Madam President.
Yes.
The word lobbyist, I don't think necessarily has to be pejorative, because we all need to be voices as board members. I know that AXA conveys their views on matters, and there are various organizations. PTA weighs in, CSBA weighs in. A lot of organizations that represent either a broad scope or a narrowed group of people in education. They are voices for us, and this gives us another way to apply added impact on persuasion there in Sacramento. And so I don't think that using the word lobbyist should be bandied about as if there's something negative about this. This is another way in which we get information and we relay information, and it is a known organization that is, again, anything I've ever heard, they're very highly respected, and they certainly have a purpose in education, in representing students across the state.
I would agree. I think that we need people up in Sacramento that can speak on a daily basis, on a regular basis, and talk about the things that we're sharing with them, and have that person up there, that and groups that are up there to be able to do that. We can't all just go up to Sacramento when we need to, but they're up there all the time. So we can speak to them on a regular basis and make sure that they're sharing our needs and our wants. So I would support it. So I guess we'll take a roll call vote, or did you have another comment?
No, I'm just gonna vote no because I had to fly to Sacramento a month ago to lobby for our constituents. So I'm not really impressed with lobbyists right now.
So we'll take a roll call vote. Mrs. Freeman?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs.
Oh,
Blake?
come on.
No.
Mr. Youngblood?
No.
And Mrs. Buck is a yes, so that passes 3-2.
10 more months, guys. We got this. She needs to read 10 more months.
Okay, last one is number 40.
Aye.
Need a motion to approve.
So painful.
Jesus.
It just is.
I'll make a motion
So
to approve the
wrong.
agreement with Dr. Jean Tavernetti to provide coaching and professional development to PYLUSD induction candidates and new site administrators from February 15th, 2022 through June 2nd, 2022.
I'll second.
So sorry, guys. I'm running out of
So
power
a
very
motion by
soon.
Mrs. Blade, second by Mrs. Anderson. Mr. Youngblood, you held it. Why don't you speak first?
We gotta
Yes.
vote Maryland out
So,
for sure.
like I said,
No,
when I
mean,
tried to look up information on this gentleman, I was having some difficulty, so I wanted a little more clarification of who he was and what his qualifications were, more than just the paragraph or so on the form.
Dr. Adamson?
And so I just want to be clear that I heard you correctly. Trustee Youngblood, that you wanted some more information about him and what he teaches, correct?
Mhm.
Yes. So essentially, we were hoping and proposing to contract with him to come in as a consultant to offer
Dr.
training
Adamson has
specifically
to go,
our
too.
inductions to our new
How do we
teaching
get rid of her?
candidates. This is
She may be our
this is
biggest
very
problem.
typical for we provide professional development
You're
to all
welcome,
of our
Sarah.
new teachers, particularly when they're in that 2-year program. And we have worked with Jean Tavernetti. Goodness, I think he was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. We haven't, it's been a little while. But the reason we went back is knowing that we have this funding for professional development, through our A through G effectiveness grant. And because of the results that we were able to achieve, through his approach, and it's really a combination of instruction of effective practices. He uses research-based instruction that he shares through the model of professional development and then coaching as well. So a lot of that also involves observations, that he goes in and watches teachers teaching in the class and then is able to provide feedback. Brings that back to sort of a professional learning community kind of situation where they're able to talk and really discuss teaching that he's been able to observe and share with the other teachers who are learning at the same time. So it really is, I think in this particular case we're able to speak firsthand based on some of the results that we had when we did have him in the district working with our teachers.
I see.
Yeah, too. We're happy to provide an agenda of everything that will be covered, and an itinerary of what the exact teaching practices will be, if that would be helpful.
I had a question. I didn't know much about him, so I kind of started asking around, and he's actually very well liked and popular around the teachers. And so we started looking at the concept map and the thinking maps. And so we were wondering what will the work be around the language frames, and then also too, is the expectation that all teachers will use the language frames and that it will not be seen any longer as like an accommodation, since he's kind of specialized in this, and can we provide broader training of these things? Because as I question him, what he is bringing to us seems to be very popular and very very the students learn very well from this stuff. So is there a way that we can get access to him for all teachers instead of not just the new ones? I think this would be something to spend some money on. And then also another question is how is a collaborative lesson study and data reflection? How does that look for our teachers because that's one of the things that he highlights on his page.
I don't know if I can speak specifically. I haven't seen that particular approach myself, but essentially when he's looking at a data, it really is based on the observations that he's done of the teachers, and then he'll share that back. in a format that they're able to sort of break down and unpack the lesson and be able to share feedback on what was effective, what wasn't, maybe even looking at some of the immediate formative assessment from the classroom and see how much learning took place from the students. And so that would be something when you're looking at data, they'd be unpacking that and discussing what worked and what didn't work. I don't know, I'm going to look to Dr. Leone to see if there's anything else that I'm missing that you want to add to that you maybe want to highlight.
Okay.
I can
So what Dr. Tavernetti would do is with those data collections is go into a classroom and observe and then have other new teachers come and see what they see so that there's calibration with the engagement of students, the participation, the collaboration, and so that's the data that's collected. So it's observable data. It's also, participation data, how many kids were engaged, how many kids were participating. And so what he also does is work with new administrators, so new principals. So as they're doing walkthroughs and able to give feedback to teachers, they know that what they're looking for instructional best practices. So when they give that feedback, they can be those instructional leaders to say, you had this level of engagement with students, you had the participation, you provided language stems for our English language learners. I heard the board talking about the imperative for our English language learners and to build the capacity. And so this is what he would be doing with teachers and also with our new administrators so that they know what they need to be looking for to give that feedback to our teachers. And our new principals have asked for professional development as they're trying to strengthen their own capacity.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering when I found out that the language frames, it was seen as an accommodation and how successful it is. I was just hoping that if we could get everybody trained on this and so it's no longer seen as an accommodation, I think that would just be amazing. But his program sounds great and I'm super excited and I hope we can expand, not just from the newer teachers.
We would love that opportunity to do so. And I think for now, just given the year, professional development has been a challenge to begin with. And so focusing on our induction candidates this year with the hope of being able to extend it into next year would be our intention.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for new teachers, it's incredibly important, I think, to have that coach. And that's kind of what I see this as, really somebody to get in there and back them up, support them, give them tips. So I think it's wonderful. And I'm glad that we're doing this as well. I'd be interested in seeing it out and play more and maybe even walking through with, I'd like to walk through so that he can point out some things that I should observe.
If I can add to it, as a new administrator about 15 years ago, I had the pleasure of working with him for about half the year at Kramer Middle School, and he was exceptional. As a new administrator, moving from class to class, looking for best instruction, making sure that, and he does it in a very non-threatening way too. So he provides very good feedback, very direct feedback about how teachers can improve their lessons for their kids and demonstrate that the students are learning what is expected for them to learn. So I can speak firsthand as an administrator who had that experience several years ago.
And if I may add, kind of what you said, Carrie, and that is, I have heard many times when we've had new people come into our district say how much they appreciate the support they get here, which sometimes is lacking in other districts. And I think it's ever so important to nurture and grow and expand the skill set of all of our people, but this particular opportunity, I think, will be part of that. And I'm just excited by the fact that we can move forward and have some further staff development. We've had to forego many things recently, well, actually for a period of time, and this is exciting. Thank you.
Mr. Youngblood, anything else before we take a vote?
No. It sounds like he can be a very dynamic person. So with all of your recommendations, I see no problem.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll take a roll call vote. Mrs. Freeman?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Blades?
Aye.
Mr. Youngblood?
Aye.
And Mrs. Buck is an aye as well. So motion carries 5-0. And that brings us to future board agenda items. Mrs. Blades, why don't we start with you?
How did you know I'd have something?
Just an idea.
Okay, so I know I was not successful on the second, but I have some stuff that I have just can you take one back down? Thank you. Here's this, what I read, and this is also to a resolution. I would like us to just at least, since we are having all these problems in the district with the masks and kind of the inconsistency and discriminatory actions, I would just like us to review this and show that this is not, nothing has to be looked at by an attorney, because this is basically a return to what we were doing for the past year and a half, besides before we had this happen a few weeks ago, where it kicked off at one of our schools. And so I'm just asking that we can discuss this, and if we need to bring in an attorney or if we need to bring anyone in, that we take a look at this, because we're losing kids. This, the parents that were up here earlier that were talking at the podium, they're pulling their kids. Somebody from Travis Ranch told me earlier that he's pulling all 4 of his kids. So as we continue, we weren't having this issue about kids being removed from the classroom. We weren't having this issue a few weeks ago. And then all of a sudden now it's an issue and we're starting to lose our students. And so I think we need to talk and we need to discuss this, because I know it's being handled differently at all these other school districts. And so I would just like to have a discussion to work with the students, work with the parents as we have, as we were doing in the past, and put the emphasis back on the education of the students and not on what type of face covering or mask that they're wearing.
Mrs. Anderson, do you have any
Are we just doing? We need consensus of the board to bring this to a future meeting.
I haven't even read it this evening, so I'm, for now, I'll say no because I haven't even read it.
Oh my gosh.
It's in front of you.
Can I
It's a
put something out?
discussion.
When we were brought here on the 2nd, there was an email that sent out about the 2nd at 8:30 in the morning, and we were supposed to come for virtual. And then it didn't get consensus of the board to change from virtual to moving the date. So I would just like, if we're going to do this process, I would just like some consistency, because I never was asked if I wanted the agenda to change from going virtual and then to, like, pushing it out to the 16th. So I would just like to ask for some consistency.
I'll give it a thumbs up.
Okay, thumbs up from Mr. Youngblood. We talked about this at the last meeting, and at that time we decided not to move it forward at this point. So I'm going to also do a thumbs down at this point.
Continue to move it forward.
I'm also going to do thumbs down because I need to review this. Some of this language is very vague.
That is why we don't trust you.
I think it needs to be investigated further, and I'd like to look at this a little bit longer before I make a decision.
Agendize it. Agendize it.
Okay, so
That's a month.
Mrs. Anderson, do you have any future board agenda items?
I would just like us to have a study session on CRT and move forward with that. We're so close. I'd like to finish that.
Take care of the health of your kids. That is true.
Mrs. Freeman?
Hierarchy of needs.
I have nothing. I just really want to get back to the regular business of the district. Thank you.
Mr. Youngblood?
Not the health of the kids.
I have nothing yet.
That would be terrible.
Oh, yes, we did.
The
CRT
CRT,
study session.
you actually as a board agreed to a study session back in December, and so we were trying to schedule additional dates for the
February.
special meeting, and so I'll work with you
We're
to
in February.
obtain dates for a special workshop.
Come on.
Mr. Youngblood?
Another
Okay,
workshop.
so future board agenda items for me, we are getting ready to, or we have sent out a student survey, the California Healthy Students, and we only send it out to 1 grade level in middle school and 1 grade level in high school. And I would like us to send it out to all grade levels in middle school and high school to get a better representation of what's happening.
Don't do surveys.
Did you see the questions on that survey?
The California Healthy
Mhm.
Survey,
Did you see it?
it's the one that we send out every year.
Right, and the survey, I think for 10th grade, had a lot of very personal questions asking if they had sought mental health treatment, if they were taking medication. And I know the constituents were very, very upset that these questions were even being asked to their students. And so I would say no.
That's That's why you opt out of all data collection. All of that.
But you can't even
trust they opt out.
I think we have to do that survey. I think we're required to.
We are required at certain grade levels, correct?
Why would we require?
Why do you have to ask El
We
Salsa
actually
for all
administer
your
it to
questions?
4 different grade levels. There's nothing prescribed in any statute that says it has to be at certain grade levels, but we elected to give it to the 5th, 7th, and 10th, thank you, 10th grade students, because those were the same 3 grade levels that the California Healthy Kids Survey is typically given to. We don't participate in the California Healthy Kids Survey. We took some of the same questions and embedded those into our stakeholder survey. So there's questions related to mental health and that sort of thing, just because those were questions that were already embedded into the California Healthy Kids Survey that we saw value in getting some responses for. So, but that's reviewed annually, and the idea is to create some longitudinal data over time with those different questions, so we can compare it across years. But we do modify it and tweak it each year. Again, we can always take that feedback and make those adjustments as we move forward. But those 4, as opposed to doing it in every grade level, we initially talked about that possibility of giving it at every grade level, but the logistics of that in our classrooms it would be quite a challenge because of the time that it would take to administer that and the missed instructional time that would be as a result of that. So we chose 2 grade levels at the elementary level, 1 at the middle and 1 at the high school, just to minimize the impact to our school campuses.
Do you think that we would get more detailed or more robust results looking at more grade levels based on the pandemic and things that have happened over the last couple of years for all the students?
I think with any survey, if you have more participants, you get more responses. And if you have more responses, then it might maybe shift the averages a little bit. But we haven't done it at every grade span. We've only done it at those 4, so it's hard to say.
How long have we been doing the survey? If we're looking at longitudinal.
Including the California Healthy Kids Survey or just the stakeholder survey?
Including.
Including as long as I've been in the district, 20 years.
So we would see if we did with these results, we would see if there was any fluctuation just based on.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then I'll withdraw that. Okay. So that brings us to adjournment. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion to adjourn if that's okay.
Sure. Go right ahead.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Freeman, second by Mrs. Anderson. We'll do a roll call vote for this as well. Mrs. Freeman.
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson.
Aye.
Mrs. Blades. Aye. Mr. Youngblood.
Aye.
And aye for me as well. And motion carries, and we are adjourned at 11:22. Shoot.